The building was quiet until someone screamed, "Human, why do you have a mini Shai-Hulud between your legs?" The shout came from Galactic, the landlady, a four-armed alien with green scales and wide yellow eyes. She had just opened the door to room 12A, where her new tenant, a human named Jake, was living. Jake had just stepped out of the shower, drying his hair with a towel, when she barged in. The towel around his waist slipped a little, and that's when the trouble started. Galactic froze, stared, then screamed so loud the walls shook. Jake jumped and pulled the towel back up, his eyes wide. "What the hell?" He yelled. "Why are you in my room?" But Galactic wasn't listening. She pointed a shaking claw at him, shouting, that thing. Between your legs. It moved. It's alive." Jake blinked, confused. "What? You mean my?" "Wait, no, that's normal." Galactic backed out of the room quickly, slammed the door, and hit the emergency alarm. Red lights flashed across the hallway as other aliens peeked out of their rooms. "Did she say the human is hiding a Shai-Hulud?" one alien asked. "Scared?" "No." "She said a mini Shai-Hulud," whispered another, even more horrified. Jake sat on the edge of his bed, still wet and confused, outside his room. A crowd of alien tenants started gathering. All of them were whispering, pointing, and staring at his door like he had a deadly creature locked inside. "Lock it down," Galactic growled, "until we know what that thing is. He is not allowed to leave this room, but it's just part of his anatomy," said one of the elder tenants. A blue-skinned being with 4 eyes. Galactic shook her head. "No, I've seen anatomy files on humans. Nothing ever said they had a creature attached down there." Jake knocked on the door from the inside, frustrated. "I can hear you, you know. It's not a creature." Galactic didn't reply. Instead, she activated a privacy field around his room, blocking signals and communications. Now Jake was cut off from the rest of the station. He sat down again, wondering how a regular shower had turned into a hostage situation. Back in the hallway, aliens were trying to remember what a Shai-Hulud was. In old desert tales, it was a giant worm that could eat ships and cities. It was feared, respected, and always stayed underground. Now, rumors spread that the human had a small version of it. Some said it could grow bigger when angry. Others claimed it had its own brain and could bite by nightfall. The station's news system flashed an alert. "Warning, human with concealed organic weapon under investigation." Jake didn't know that outside a storm of misunderstanding had begun. He just wrapped himself in a blanket and groaned. "This is the worst apartment I've ever rented." Suddenly, there was a soft knock on his door. Jake stood up carefully, nervous. The privacy field made it hard to see, but a voice came through. "Hi, I'm Lyra," said a soft, curious voice. "I live across the hall. Can I ask something?" Jake sighed. "What now?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Is it true you have a living thing attached?" Jake slapped his forehead. "No, it's just how humans are built. I'm not hiding a worm." Lyra sounded confused, but it moved when she saw it, right? Jake gritted his teeth. "Because I was shocked and cold," and she kicked the door in. Silence. Then Lyra whispered, "Can I see it? For science." Jake let out a groan loud enough for Galactic to hear from downstairs. "No, you can't see it." "Why does everyone on this station think I'm a science exhibit?" Behind the privacy field, Lyra giggled a little. "You're strange." "Human," she said, "but not scary." Jake sat back down, frustrated but also tired. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if he'd be taken away or worse. But one thing was clear. Now being human on an alien station was never going to be normal. And his body, apparently, was causing more fear than a plasma rifle. As he closed his eyes to rest, he muttered to himself, "Next time, I'm renting from humans." Outside, Garaxa called a meeting with other tenants. She pointed at a hologram of Jake and said, "We must report this to the Galactic Science Council. Let them decide what kind of dangerous creature the human is hiding." Asterisk, the next morning, the entire floor was buzzing with whispers. Jake didn't know it yet, but his private parts had become a public mystery. Aliens crowded the main hallway. Talking in low voices and nervous clicks, he keeps it hidden in his towel. Said one yellow-skinned alien, "I heard it look straight at Garaxa before twitching." Replied another, "No, no." Said an older tenant with blue fur, "It has teeth, I swear." She said it opened its mouth. That wasn't true, but facts didn't matter anymore. The legend of the mini Shai-Hulud had already started spreading across the building. Jake sat inside his room, still locked in by the privacy field. He had no idea how bad the rumors were getting. He just wanted breakfast. He pressed the call button on the wall again. "Garaxa, I need food. I haven't eaten since yesterday." The speaker buzzed. Then her cold voice replied, "Dangerous creatures don't get breakfast." Jake groaned and kicked the wall. He wasn't dangerous, just misunderstood, naked at the wrong time outside. Garaxa held a meeting in the common area. A floating projector showed a rough sketch of the worm based on her memory. It looked terrifying, huge teeth, angry eyes, and dripping goo. That's not what it looks like. Jake yelled through his door, "That's a cartoon. No yelling." Garaxa snapped, "The council is sending scientists to investigate." More gasps echoed in the hallway. Some aliens took pictures of Jake's door like it was a zoo exhibit. Others placed small gifts in front of it, offerings to the worm god in fear or respect. Jake rubbed his face, feeling helpless. Then a knock came again, gentle this time. "Lyra?" he guessed. "Yes," her voice replied softly. "I brought you something to eat." She slid a food tray under the privacy field using a long stick. Jake grabbed it quickly. "Thank you." He took a bite and asked, "Do you believe them? About the worm thing?" Lyra hesitated. "I don't know, Jake. It's just, we've never seen a human before." "Yeah? Well, I've never seen a six-eyed slug that sells candy on the stairs. But I didn't scream." Jake mumbled. Lyra giggled again. Inside the elevator, a new visitor arrived. 3 aliens in white suits with glowing blue visors stepped out. They carried scanners, vials, and tiny robotic drones. The one in front said in a robotic voice, "We are the Xenobiology team, Sector 9. Room 12A is under our authority now." Garaxa bowed and pointed to Jake's room. "He's in there, protecting the creature." Jake heard the clicks of boots and hiss of tools outside his door. Then a voice said, "Human subject, please prepare for biological inspection." "What?" Jake shouted. "No. I'm not showing anyone anything." Lyra's voice whispered, "Just stay calm. Maybe you can talk to them." But Jake had no choice. The scientists deactivated the privacy field and walked in slowly. 2 drones hovered over his head, scanning him with blue light. Subject shows signs of confusion and embarrassment. One scientist said, "Confirm worm attachment," said another. Jake threw a pillow at them. "It's not a worm. It's just a confirmed," the third one said, writing notes. "Organically attached at lower torso, warm-blooded moves when startled." Jake pulled a blanket over himself and turned red. One of the drones beeped and displayed a 3D model of Jake's anatomy. The aliens gasped. "Is it always like that?" One whispered. Jake glared at them. "Yes, it's normal." They looked at each other, speaking in fast alien code. Then one scientist said, "We must report this to the council immediately, before leaving." One of them said kindly, "Don't worry, human. Your worm is." Very impressive. Jake buried his face in his hands as the scientists left. Garaxa followed them, asking questions. "How dangerous is it?" She asked, "Can it hypnotize prey?" Does it sting? The scientists didn't answer, but their silence only made things worse. Now the entire floor believed the human had a secret living weapon between his legs. Back in his room, Jake slumped on the floor, holding the food tray. I just wanted a cheap place to live, he whispered to himself. That night, more aliens gathered outside his room. Some brought cameras. One even started praying to the living Shai-Hulud, asking for fertility. Blessings, Jake shouted. Stop doing weird stuff outside my door. But they didn't stop. One alien child even drew a picture and slipped it under the door. It showed a cartoon version of Jake with a giant worm tail, smiling. Jake looked at it and sighed. Then he heard Lyra's voice again. I think they're just scared of what they don't understand, she said. Yeah, Jake replied. But I didn't know fear would make me famous. She giggled. Well, you're trending on Galactic Net. Jake's mouth dropped open. What? 3 white-suited figures entered the hallway like ghosts from a high-security lab. Their suits were tight and glowing, their faces hidden behind tinted visors, and strange tools hung from their belts. Galactic, the landlady, stepped back and bowed. Her head slightly respected scientists, she said. The dangerous human is inside room 1-2A. The lead scientists nodded without speaking. They moved as one, slow and silent, like they didn't want to wake something deadly. Tenants watched from behind corners and open doors. No one had ever seen a real xenobiology team on this floor before. One young alien whispered. They only come when something strange is found, like a parasite or a space ghost. Inside the room, Jake was brushing his teeth with the last of his water ration. He looked up as the door slid open and a blue fog entered first. Then came the scientists. Whoa. Whoa. What's going on? Jake shouted, spitting foam into the sink. The lead scientist stepped forward and spoke calmly. Do not be alarmed, human male 7465. We are here to examine your biological structure and assess potential risks to galactic safety. Jake narrowed his eyes. If this is about the shower thing, I already told you it's normal. But they didn't listen. One of the scientists released a small floating drone that circled Jake 3 times, scanning his body and beeping quietly. Vital signs within range, it reported. But anomaly detected at lower body region. Jake quickly covered himself with a towel again. It's not an anomaly. It's a reproductive organ. That's all. The second scientist made a sound like a gasp through their helmet. A reproductive organ that moves independently when threatened. They asked. Jake slapped his forehead. It doesn't move to threaten anyone. It just moves. Okay? It has blood vessels. The third scientist leaned closer, fascinated, so it inflates with internal pressure. Amazing. Jake backed away. Please don't use words like inflate and amazing in the same sentence. One of the drones blinked red and projected a holographic image of Jake's lower anatomy in the air. All 3 scientists stared at it in silence. Then one whispered, It's beautiful. Jake choked on air. Excuse me? The scientist ignored him. This explains the myths, said the leader. The desert tribes must have seen early humans and confused the appendage with Shai-Hulud larvae. Jake groaned. I can't believe I'm in a research paper about my private parts. Suddenly, the door opened again and Lyra stepped in, looking nervous. Please, she said, you're scaring him. He's not a threat. The scientists turned to her, surprised. You've interacted with the subject directly. One asked. Lyra nodded. Yes, and he's not dangerous, just embarrassed. She looked at Jake and gave a small smile. Aren't we all sometimes? Jake returned the smile weakly. The scientists discussed among themselves in a strange clicking language. Then they made their announcement. We have concluded our study, the lead one said. The human male is not hiding a weapon. Jake sighed in relief. But the scientist continued. He is still a biological anomaly. Jake blinked. Wait, what? The second scientist raised a metal finger. You possess an external, movable reproductive organ, unlike 92% of known sentient species. The third added, it may be harmless, but it still violates unknown social codes in multi-species housing, Galactic. Standing outside the door, called in, does that mean I can evict him? Jake looked furious. No, that's species discrimination. The lead scientist raised a hand. We recommend temporary containment in a medical facility for further study. Jake's jaw dropped. You want to take me away because of my No, I'm not going into some lab zoo. The drone beeped. Again, showing rising heart rate data. Subject is agitated. It warned, of course I'm agitated. Jake snapped. I'm being treated like an alien just because I have... You know what? Lyra stepped forward. Please, this is wrong. The scientists looked at each other. Then the leader said, very well, we will allow him to remain here. Under observation, Galactic hissed. Then I want security outside his door. Jake muttered. What do they think I'm going to do? Attack someone with it? The scientists began packing their equipment. Before leaving, one of them handed Lyra a data chip. This has our full report, they said. But tell him something from us. Jake raised an eyebrow. What? The scientist gave a small, strange smile. Tell him his kind may be more important than we ever thought. Then they left. As the door shut behind them, silence filled the room. Jake sat down, exhausted. Wrapping the blanket tighter around himself, Lyra sat beside him on the floor. Are you okay? She asked. He nodded slowly. I think so. She looked at him for a moment. Your people are very different, she said. Jake gave a small laugh. You have no idea. They sat together quietly as the lights dimmed for night. Outside the room, two small patrol bots floated back and forth, guarding the dangerous human and far away. In a cold lab, the scientists reviewed their footage again. One of them zoomed in and whispered, we must inform the Galactic Council, *. Jake sat by the window, arms folded, eyes staring out into the cold, metallic hallway. Two floating patrol drones hovered near his door. Silent, but always watching. It had been 2 days since the scientists came. 2 long, boring days where he was. Treated more like a bomb than a person, he couldn't leave his room. Couldn't access the station's entertainment grid, and couldn't even shower without someone calling it a risk event. He whispered to himself, I didn't come to space to be locked up over my junk. A soft knock came at his door. He didn't move at first. But then he heard a familiar voice. Jake, it's me, Lyra said. Open up. He walked over and opened the door a little. She slipped in fast and closed it behind her. She was wearing a heavy coat, carrying a small bag, and her eyes looked serious. You can't stay here anymore, she said quietly. Jake raised an eyebrow. What? Did they upgrade me to super dangerous now? She shook her head. Worse. The Council's transport ship arrives tomorrow. Jake froze. Council? You mean, it's a Galactic Council? Lyra nodded. If they take you, you'll be gone for months, maybe years. They'll study you, test you, maybe even clone you. Jake's stomach turned. He didn't want to become a science project. He just wanted to live in peace. So, what do we do? He asked. Lyra opened her bag and pulled out a small keycard and a map. We escape, she whispered. Jake stared at her, stunned. You're serious? Yes, she said. I mapped the service tunnels and found a path too. The lower port, he hesitated. If I get caught, they'll arrest me, they'll arrest both of us, she added. But we can make it if we leave during the maintenance cycle tonight when the patrol drones go offline for cleaning. Jake looked down at his hands. He thought about Earth, about his family, and about the dumb ad he answered to rent this cheap, peaceful room. Then he looked at Lyra, alien, bright. Right, and the only one who treated him like a person. Let's do it, he said, that night. At precisely 2 o'clock station time, the hallway lights dimmed and the patrol drones floated off toward the cleaning bay. Jake opened his door slowly, peeking. Out, no one was in sight. Lyra was already waiting in the stairwell with her coat's hood pulled up. They moved fast, avoiding the main hallways. The service tunnels were narrow and smelled like engine oil and old socks. Lyra held a small glowing orb to light their path. Jake asked, "Why are you helping me?" She paused, then said, "Because everyone else sees you as a threat." "But I saw you smile once." Jake blinked, surprised. "That's a weird reason to risk your job and your life," he said. She smiled. "I like weird." They reached the first security checkpoint. Lyra used the keycard she stole from Garax's. Off as earlier, the door beeped once, then slid open. Jake looked at her in amazement. "You're good at this?" she smirked. "I used to sneak out of school all the time." They crawled through another vent, then dropped into a maintenance hallway. But just as they turned the corner toward the port bay, they heard a mechanical voice shout, "Unauthorized movement detected." Jake cursed under his breath. The wall panels opened and a small defense turret rose up. "Run!" Lyra shouted. They sprinted down the hall as red lights flashed and alarms rang. Jake barely ducked a stun bolt as it fired behind him. They slid through a waste chute, landing hard in a pile of soft trash bags. Lyra groaned. "Well, we're alive," Jake laughed. "Out of breath? That's a win." They crawled out and reached the loading dock. Ahead was a transport ship, a small, beat-up cargo hauler with its doors half open. Jake ran forward, but Lyra grabbed his arm. "Wait," she said. 2 security guards stood between them and the ship. They hadn't seen Jake yet. Lyra leaned in and whispered, "I'll distract them." Before he could argue, she pulled off her coat and marched toward the guards. "Excuse me." She shouted, "There's been a fire in the food storage unit." The guards turned, confused. A fire. Jake took his chance. He dashed across the floor, ducking behind crates, and slipped into the back of the cargo hauler. He peeked out as the guards followed Lyra toward the other hallway. She turned and gave him a quick wink before disappearing around the corner. Jake closed the ship's door and sighed. But just then, a hand grabbed his shoulder from behind. He jumped, spinning around, ready to punch. But it was an old alien pilot, bald, with metal arms and one glowing eye. "You trying to steal my ship, human?" Jake gulped. "I'll pay you anything. I just need to get out of here." The old pilot stared at him, then nodded slowly. "All right," he said. But you better not bring the Shai-Hulud with you." Jake winced. "It's not to. Never." Mind, as the ship lifted off quietly, Jake looked back through the small window. No alarms yet, no sirens yet, but he knew the whole station would be searching for him by sunrise. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't know what waited for him next, but at least he wasn't a prisoner anymore. And Lyra, she had risked everything for him. Now he just had to survive long enough to find her again. Asterisk. The trial hall of Zarno Prime was shaped like a spiral shell, large enough to hold 500 beings. It echoed with whispers, clicks, and buzzing noises from aliens of all kinds, all staring at the strange creature brought in under heavy guard. A human Jake. He was handcuffed, confused, tired, slightly offended that his arrest code read, "Biological weapon carrier. Class unknown." He looked up at the high platform where 3 alien judges sat, one with feathers, one with horns, and one with a floating brain inside a glass shell. The courtroom was silent as the oldest judge banged a staff on the floor. "The trial of human male 7465 shall begin," she said, her voice deep and slow. Jake frowned. "Can we start by not calling me by a number? I have a name, The judge ignored him. The prosecution stepped forward, a tall, thin alien with silver skin and 6 arms. "Your Honors," the prosecutor began, "this creature, while appearing harmless, possesses a hidden appendage of great, unknown power, which may or may not be sentient." Jake groaned. "It's not sentient." The crowd gasped. Some held their tentacles in shock. Others started writing in their datapads. The prosecutor continued. "Multiple witnesses claim the creature moved on its own, twitched with intent, and caused psychological trauma to several innocent civilians, including a respected landlady." Jake raised his hand. "Objection. That was just me getting out of the shower." The judges whispered among themselves in an alien language. Then one asked, "Human, please explain this." "Entity attached to your body." Jake took a deep breath. He walked to the center of the room and said, "It's not a weapon, not a creature, not a parasite tits, just a part of human biology." "Prove it," said the judge with horns. Jake's eyes went wide. "What? No. I'm not taking off my pants in front of 500 aliens." The courtroom erupted into noise. The brain judge floated closer, speaking in a mechanical tone. "Describe the function of the appendage in detail." Jake sighed, rubbed his forehead, and said, "Okay, fine." He began explaining, using the cleanest words he could. "It's called a penis, all right? It's part of the male reproductive system." A few aliens fainted right away. Jake looked around nervously. "It's for mating, reproduction, and yes, sit moves sometimes, but only because of blood flow and hormones, not because it wants to fight anyone." The floating brain buzzed. "Fascinating." One alien in the back yelled, "Blasphemy." Another shouted, "Our children are watching this live broadcast." Jake blinked. "Wait, this is being broadcasted." The judges looked at each other. "Enough," the feathered judge said. "This must go to the Council of Biological Affairs for classification." Jake shouted, "I'm not a specimen to classify. I'm a person." Just then, the doors burst open. Lyra ran in, panting, her clothes torn and dirty from her escape. Guards rushed toward her, but she raised her hands. "I'm here to speak for the human," she said. The judges allowed her forward. She stood beside Jake, placing her hand gently on his arm. "This isn't justice," she said, facing the crowd. "This is fear of something you don't understand. He didn't hurt anyone. He didn't threaten anyone. And yet, look how you treat him." She turned to Jake, smiling softly. "He's not dangerous. He's just different." The hall was quiet. Even the prosecutor didn't speak. Jake looked at Lyra, touched by her courage. Then he turned to the judges and said, "Do you really think a tiny piece of skin makes me a criminal? I came here to rent a room, not to start a revolution." The judges whispered among themselves again. Finally, the horned one stood. "We shall deliver our verdict." He said, "All recordings of this trial will be sealed for cultural sensitivity." Jake sighed in relief. "You, human." The judge continued, "Are not guilty of any criminal action." Jake blinked, stunned, but the judge raised a hand. "You are guilty of causing a planetary panic due to lack of information." Jake opened his mouth to argue, but closed it again. "Your punishment," the judge said, "is to be placed under cultural training. And to educate others about your biology." Jake laughed. "You're making me teach alien school?" "Yes," said the feathered judge. "You will explain your anatomy in a safe, controlled classroom." Lyra gave his hand a gentle squeeze. "At least you're free." Jake smiled. "Great. Now I'm the galaxy's weirdest biology teacher." The guards unlocked his cuffs and led him out of the hall. Aliens watched him pass, no longer filled with fear, but with curiosity. Some even waved. One whispered, "So that's the guy with the living worm." Jake stopped walking and sighed. "I'm never living this down," he muttered. But as he looked at Lyra beside him, Still walking with pride, he knew it could have been worse. He could have been alone. Instead, he had a friend, maybe more by his side. And now, a strange new job teaching aliens why humans were weirder than they ever imagined. Jake stood on the edge of the Galactic Council platform, staring at the sea of alien leaders seated before him. Rows and rows of them, each from a different world. A different race, a different way of thinking. Some floated in anti-gravity thrones. Some slithered on coils. Others blinked from giant eyes that didn't have eyelids at all. And all of them were staring at him, the human, the one with the mini Shai-Hulud. Jake adjusted his collar and leaned toward Lyra, whispering, "How did I end up here? I just wanted a cheap place to live." Lyra smiled softly. "Now, you're making history." At the center of the chamber, a deep voice spoke through hidden speakers. "The hearing shall begin." A 12-foot-tall insectoid delegate stood up, its voice clicking through a translator. "Fellow council members, we are gathered to decide if the human species poses a cultural threat." Jake's eyebrows shot up. "Cultural threat? Really?" The insectoid continued. "We have reviewed your anatomy, your biology, your behavior. But there are still concerns." A jellyfish-like alien raised a tentacle. Glowing softly, explained why human males do not have internal reproductive organs. It said, "It is highly vulnerable." Jake shrugged. "Yeah, not the best design, I admit." Gasps and murmurs echoed through the council hall. A robotic delegate word, and yet, "You survived as a species." Jake smiled a little. "We're stubborn." Lyra stepped forward, holding up a datapad. "This is human culture," she said. "Love, art, survival, family. We're more than just biology." She showed images humans. Dancing, crying, building, dreaming. Some aliens turned their heads sideways. Confused, others leaned in, fascinated. The insectoid delegate raised a claw. "You must understand. Most species reproduce through bonding seasons, contracts, or biological pair codes. But humans do it any time, for love or fun." Jake scratched the back of his head. "Yeah, kind of both." Another murmur swept the crowd. One delegate whispered, "That sounds dangerous." Another nodded. And chaotic, Jake stepped forward. "Look, I know we're weird to you," he said. "But we're not here to break your rules or scare your people." He looked around the room. "We just want to live and learn. And share the universe like everyone else." A silence fell over the chamber. Then, slowly, the elder voice of the council, ancient being hidden inside a glowing shell, spoke. "Perhaps it is time we stop fearing the unknown. Perhaps humanity is not a threat, but a lesson." Jake blinked, unsure if that was a good thing. The jellyfish alien floated forward again. "I propose a new idea," it said. "Let the human teach. Let him show us who he is." "Not just what he is," more voices agreed. "Yes, a cultural ambassador. Yes. Let him speak to our youth. Yes, we must learn." Then one cold voice broke through the harmony. Galactic. She had come, uninvited, and now floated on a side screen. She snarled, "You fools. He's manipulating you with his charm. That worm will spread chaos." Jake sighed. "It's not a worm." The council silenced her with a single pulse. The elder voice spoke again. "Human male, 7465, also known as Jake. You are hereby approved to stay within galactic territory, but with a duty. You will travel, speak, and educate. You will show us that the strange can also be safe." Jake gave a small bow. "Thank you, I think." Lyra grabbed his hand. "You did it," she said. "I think we both did," Jake replied. As the crowd began to break into small discussions, debates, and laughter, Jake looked around. He wasn't just the weird human anymore. He was a voice, a symbol. a bridge between species that never understood each other before. He was still uncomfortable being known across the stars for that reason, but now it had meaning. Now it had purpose. One young alien reporter ran up and asked, "Is it true your species mates for love?" Jake smiled, "Yes, and sometimes." For pizza, the reporter blinked, confused. "What's a pizza?" "You'll find out," Jake said. Later that night, Jake stood with Lyra outside the council dome. The stars above them twinkled through a glass ceiling. Lyra leaned against him, quiet. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked. "Every day," he said, "but this feels like something bigger." She nodded. "I'm glad I met you," she whispered. He turned to her, smiling. "Me too." She grinned and nudged his arm. "Just don't let the galaxy get too obsessed with your anatomy. No promises." Jake laughed. "It's already got its own fan club." They walked side by side into the glowing corridors of the station. Behind them, the Galactic Council stamped its approval on a new program, Understanding Humanity with Ambassador Jake, the most misunderstood male in the universe. Jake stood in front of a large white screen, holding a laser pointer in one hand and a banana in the other. He didn't know how he got here exactly. But somehow, after being arrested, studied, judged, and nearly deported, he had become a teacher, or, as the station's poster said, Ambassador Jake, Human Biology and Culture Explained. The classroom was filled with young aliens. Some had fur, some had antennae. One had no mouth but 5 eyes. All of them stared at him like he was the most exciting thing in the galaxy. "Today's topic," Jake said, holding up the banana, "is human reproduction again." Half the class squealed, one fainted. The banana was just for demonstration, but apparently, fruit had different meanings in other species. Jake sighed. "All right, maybe we'll talk about friendship instead, eh?" Blue-furred student raised her hand. "Is it true humans can fall in love even if they're not in the same species?" Jake smiled. "Yes, but it's complicated." Another student asked, "And what about the mini Shai-Hulud? Does every male human have one?" Jake coughed. "Yes, all of them." The class buzzed with whispers. Jake rubbed his forehead and muttered, "I need to start." Charging for this, after class, Jake walked out into the station's main corridor. Lyra was waiting there, sitting on a bench near the education hall. She waved. "So, how many students fainted this time?" "3, Jake said. "Better than yesterday." Lyra chuckled and stood up. She was carrying 2 cups of steamberry tea. They walked side by side down the glowing corridor. Sipping quietly, aliens passed them, some nodding respectfully at Jake, some still pointing at him and whispering. He didn't mind anymore. At least now they saw a person, not just a weird anatomy fact. Jake looked at Lyra. "You know, none of this would have happened without you." She smiled. "You're right. I'm serious," he said. "You stood up for me when I didn't even know how to defend myself. You taught me that being different isn't a curse, it's just a start." Lyra looked away, cheeks darkening with a blush. "And you showed me that humans aren't scary," she said. "Just confusing." They both laughed. Later that evening, they returned to the new apartment the council had assigned Jake. It was bigger than before, with a balcony that overlooked the star docks. Jake leaned on the rail, watching ships take off and land. "I used to think I didn't matter," he said quietly. "Just another guy in a crowd, trying to pay rent. But now, I'm teaching alien kids why humans cry during movies and why we dance at weddings." Lyra stepped beside him, silent for a while. Then she whispered, "Maybe that's why the galaxy needed you." He looked at her. Her soft eyes, her warm voice, her weird antennae that twitched when she was nervous. "I think I was also meant to meet you," he said. She turned to him slowly. "You're not saying that just because I broke you out of space prison, right?" Jake smiled. "Well, that helped." They both leaned in, and for a moment, time slowed down. The stars above seemed to pause, and when their lips touched, something strange happened. Not fireworks, not explosions, but calm, warmth, belonging. Lyra pulled back slightly, smiling. First interspecies kiss recorded in this sector. She teased. Jake grinned. Let's hope it doesn't get me arrested again. A loud ping came from his datapad. He checked the message. It was from the Galactic Education Board. Jake, your cultural education broadcast has reached 1.2 million views. You are now the highest-rated ambassador in 3 systems. He showed the message to Lyra, laughing. I'm going viral again. Lyra smirked. At least this time, it's not about your anatomy. Jake raised his teacup to new beginnings. She clinked her cup against his. 2 humans and 2 whatevers between their legs, she joked. They both laughed under the stars. Somewhere out there, more aliens were watching his lectures. More students were learning about love, friendship, music, and laughter, and more than ever. The galaxy was starting to understand humans were strange, but they were also wonderful, and maybe, just maybe, that tiny, misunderstood piece of anatomy had started something big. Not a war, not a scandal, but a bridge. One connection at a time. Jake leaned back and whispered, new life. New meaning. Lyra nodded. And the galaxy will never be the same.